Welcome in, latest episode of that SEC podcast. I'm your host, Michael Bratton. Go by SEC Mike on the Twitters. And there he is, our great friend, Stephen Lassan, the senior editor over at Athlon Sports. Stephen, how are you, my friend?
Mike, navigating these wild times, man. Coaching drama. We got some playoff drama. We've had some great games on Saturday, man. I don't even know where to start, my friend. What a crazy weekend, and just can't wait to be here with you and all the cousins and try to make some sense of what the heck's going on around the SEC.
Right, and I don't want to traffic, Stephen, in false rumors or anything like that, but 'tis the season, as they say. Stephen and I are a little, literally right before we went off the air, we were given indication Lane Kiffin could make a decision as soon as tonight. So, again, I'm not trying to report anything. I'm not saying it's happening. Hell, it may not come for several weeks here. But we're going to stay on top of that in case we need to. This may all of a sudden turn into an emergency podcast in the middle of it. But we've got games to recap. We got games to preview, coaching carousel, playoff projections, panic meter. What more could we possibly jam into this one? You know what, Stephen?
Mike, we've almost reached the end of the season, but there's so much to talk about, right? I mean, man, it's like we're hit in week 13, and there's just angles everywhere to cover coming up from last weekend. Man, I mean, just what a crazy Saturday it was, starting out with Texas A&M in South Carolina, and we had the showdowns with Georgia and Texas and Alabama, Oklahoma. So, man, I don't even, I said to start only where we can go with this, my friend, because there is just so much at stake coming up for the last couple of weekends, and we got all this coaching drama. Normally at the end of the season, we're kind of winding things down, but it feels like things are ramping up here.
We're just getting going. So, hey, before we get into all the action, got to remind the cousins, as always, Stephen, we are brought to you by MyBookie this football season. Go check them out, mybookie.ag. That's the website. Promo code SEC over at MyBookie. They're willing to give you a buyback guarantee of up to $500. If you start up a new account, let's say you throw in $50 into an account, it'll be covered. You lose the $50, boom, right back into your account, but only if you use that promo code SEC over at MyBookie. And then if you're an Ole Miss fan, a Florida fan, LSU fan, or who knows what fan, you probably need some of this Tennessee legend to get you through this Lane Kiffin coaching search madness. So shout out Tennessee legend, the official spirit of that SEC podcast. If your liquor store, ABC store, package store, whatever store you call it, does not have Tennessee legend, ask them why the heck not. Support the show. Get you some Tennessee legend. Stephen, how much Tennessee legend do you need to get over these games we just had?
Mike, between the games, the coaching carousel, I don't know, a bottle right now. I'm over here like nervously like checking every resource we have over here to try to make sure we're on top of things. So it's going to be a crazy show. That is for sure.
Right. And so let's start right where you kind of led us, Stephen, with Texas A&M. Undefeated A&M, Stephen, 31-30 win over them Carolina Gamecocks. It was the Aggies that needed that Tennessee legend in the first half. It's the Gamecocks that haven't put the bottle down since the game ended. What a thrilling game. Quite possibly the game of the year in the Southeastern Conference, if not the country, Stephen, as A&M marches on to 10-0 and Shane Beamer and the Gamecocks. Oh, buddy, man, they look like $1 million for half of football. Then they look like the Gamecocks for the other half of the football game. What was your thoughts on this one?
Mike, it was funny watching this game because I was so hyped up for Texas and Georgia and Oklahoma, Alabama. It's like, this is a nice appetizer, right? It's a way to ease into the day. It's a top 5 team. They're favored by almost 3 touchdowns. Boy, oh boy, was that one a lot closer than we thought. Mike, I mean, it was like in the first half, everything that could go wrong for Texas A&M went wrong. And I was sitting there at halftime thinking, 30-3, this is it. This is the upset that South Carolina and Mr. November, Shane Beamer, they were going to pull this one off. Whether it was, the turnovers that A&M had, the near turnovers by Marcel Reed, missed field goals, the fumble return for a touchdown, everything that was going wrong went wrong. And I thought, there's just the odds of Texas A&M staging a comeback felt pretty small. But it also felt like this had been just a different year for this team. And sure enough, one drive at a time, Marcel Reed and that offense led this team back, and to get the victory was just big time clutch plays by Texas A&M. And Mike, in the big picture, we've seen this team win a lot of different ways this year. Don't know if I had Saturday on my bingo card, but when we start talking about it's a different era at Texas A&M, I think a game like this kind of shows that, to be able to come back from that deficit after playing that poor to win and to be sitting here at 10-0, soon to be 11-0, what a performance by Texas A&M. So kudos to this team and Mike Elko. Would love to know how many chairs were probably destroyed in the process at halftime, but man, what a comeback on Saturday.
Hey, I'm so glad you said that, Stephen, because I did want to ask you. Again, we're well removed from the Jimbo Fisher era. We don't need to necessarily drag us back down into that awfulness. But, A&M was a program. It was pretty well documented for anybody that missed it. I know the A&M fans didn't, but, there was issues in the locker room. There was that famous class that Dick Saban came out and said, well, they bought the whole team. You know what? Even though he's been buying his team for 20 years. So, but again, we'll save that conversation for a different day. But to go from that, Stephen, to the NIL famous class essentially to a team that is, and they're still using it, but it's all legal. This is all legal. But to go from that era of kind of me first, players seemingly not all in, to this where you can be down 27 points at halftime, nobody panic. You come out here and dominate a football game, and now you got your most assuredly you're going to go 11-1 because you got Samford this week, and then you go into Texas looking to go 12-0. What does it say about Mike Elko and this program? How far they have come, and this ain't year 5, year 6 in a program. We're not even through year 2. What does it say about the state of the A&M program?
Their anxiety level might have been pretty low, but my anxiety level for them on Saturday at halftime was pretty high because 30-3 is it's a lot to come back from, especially with the way South Carolina was playing on defense at that point. Mike, I think it brings up two things. I think one is that kind of win I don't think happens like under Jimbo Fisher. I think, and as cliche as this is, it's like a culture type of win. And, there was some scouting. I don't know if you remember this offseason when we looked at the scouting in our magazine. It was, coaches were talking about what was going on behind the scenes in the culture change that Texas A&M was making. And it was like you couldn't see it necessarily if you were watching it, but behind the scenes, I think you kind of knew that this is going to be a different team and different culture under Mike Elko. We've talked about it many times, blue collar, hard work, not going to do the talking about everything. They're just going to do the work and try to win SEC titles. And I think that win on Saturday was that type of win. It's a culture win. It shows that how close this team is to be able to go from needing a last second touchdown to beat Notre Dame to beating Mississippi State in the second half to this kind of win. They have won different ways. And the one way you can do that is, roster, coaching staff, and how strong this team is together as a culture. So I think it speaks to, number one, Mike Elko's ability to get the most out of this roster, but also the culture that this team has and how strong it is as they go into the college football playoff.
Yeah, and they all but guaranteed themselves to get there now that they're at 10-0. We'll get to Stephen's updated playoff projections to come. But could you also see, Stephen, I've been asking everybody this, so I'm just kind of curious to hear your thoughts. Do you think this could be a point in time for A&M where if they do go on to, let's say, win the national championship, which may sound crazy. Well, I don't think at this point it does, but would have a couple months ago. If they go on to win it, we can look back at this game as, maybe the starting point where I'm sure they already had belief, but maybe this is kind of, a lot of these national championship teams, they need 1 point to kind of, they always look back at years and years to come. Could this performance in the second half, could this be the moment it all clicked for A&M?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting idea because I think back to last year, and it's not necessarily the same thing, but when Ohio State lost to Michigan, it was kind of a turning point for that season. It was, they had all this talent, but they fell short in a big time game, and they had this huge meeting, and they turned their season around and won out, and won in pretty convincing fashion against some good teams in the playoff. So I do think there is kind of a point of the season that's kind of like a cross in the roads point here, because A&M could have lost this game. They could have turned around and lose to Texas in a few weeks, and 10-2 and not playing in the SEC championship game would go, this team did this last year. They fell apart in November when they had a chance to finish. And so I just think it's a different identity. It's a different culture under Mike Elko. And I think you saw that come through with that resilience and ability to come back. But also, I think, like you said, 12-0, 11-1 looks a heck of a lot better than 10-2 and losing your last two SEC games. So to be able to finish strong and to go into the playoff knowing that this is kind of the moment where everything really started to click and we overcame this deficit, if you get down in the playoff, that ought to give them a lot of confidence that they can finish the job. Mike, I will tell you, little teaser here, in this week's playoff seeding that I did a little bracket in my imagination here, I think A&M, and that's if the bracket plays out like that, A&M has got a really good chance to go to the national championship game. So it's all there for them this year.
Mm-hmm. And it's also there for us, Stephen. Shout out to Truffle Shuffle. He gifted a membership to Amanda, I believe it was. Shout out Truffle. And shout out the legend, JR.
The legend, cousin JR, has done it again.
He gifted Metal Rules. And shout out Steven Up. He gifted...
Always showing up for them boys in Tuscaloosa. It's Steven Up. Roll Tide.
Thank you, Steven Up. He gifted Derek Floyd. So, Derek, Metal Rules, and Amanda, welcome to
the family.
Yeah. And A&M, you have been elevated to the undefeated 10-0. Xavier, appreciate you for the donation. There's a maroon and white freight train headed towards Austin in 2 weeks, and there ain't a damn thing Texas 8-4 little brother Shorthorns can do to stop it. Giga baggies. Well, for Xavier, appreciate the donations. Stephen, what do you think? Not that you're outright predicting the game, because we will save that for a different time. But if you had to assign like a point spread, do you think A&M at Texas, where would you hypothetically put that?
I was going to ask you if you had seen a point spread for that game when I saw this question pop up, because I would probably set it maybe 3 or 4 points, one way or the other.
Ooh.
I think that one thing I would start to remind everybody is, when games like meet your rival, it does not, like, anything can happen in these games. Like, some team could be 0-11 and some team could be 8-3, and you throw the records out when those kind of games happen. So weird things happen in those kind of games. I would not be shocked at all if Texas won. I would not be surprised if Texas A&M finished the job to go undefeated. I will say, based upon what we saw on Saturday, I would be very worried if I was Texas. But I would say that Texas is probably going to get a lot of love at the odds makers for that one.
I am going to put that line closer to 8 or 9 in favor of A&M. No respect for the Shorthorns, as Xavier called them. That, especially with Sarkisian out here making excuses. We could be multiple top. Who said we underachieved? 7-3. $50 million roster, God's gift, Stevens Heisman quarterback. 7-3 is a disappointment. What? Come on. Oh my God. I don't know what Sark's been smoking, but you were supposed to compete for the national championship, and I'd say it's less than 10% they even make the college football playoff.
If I was a Texas fan, I don't know that I'd want to hear the excuses from Sark, right?
No.
I mean, they were a number one team for a reason. They've recruited at a high level. They have all the talent they need. Yes, they have some roster holes. That's also on Sark and the staff to go out and fill those roster holes this offseason. They have a 5-star quarterback. He has developed, but maybe not at the pace that I think we all thought he would. There's no reason to underachieve. Like 9-3, 8-4 is pretty significant in terms of underachieving. I don't know they're the most disappointing team in the country. I think that's probably Penn State or Clemson. But at the same time, I'm not sure that if I was a Texas fan, I'd be comforted to hear some of these excuses coming out of Sark this season. By the way, I will say, Mike, on Texas A&M Texas, shout out Parker Fleming, I think of CFB Graphs, I think it's his name. His model has Texas A&M by 5.4 right now would be the projected outcome according to the analytics.
Okay. He must have went to Texas. Well, speaking of Texas, how about them dogs, Stephen? Thoughts on Georgia dominating Sarkisian and his excuses, 35-10. And heck, I don't know about, well, I know what you'll say, Stephen, but I don't even think Arch looked bad. I thought he looked good. Well, I don't know. He looked decent. I guess I'm not putting it on Arch. I'm putting it on, they can't run the ball. They can't really protect him. Receivers were dropping the ball left and right. Again, Arch could have played better. He had the one nice touchdown pass, but what was your thoughts on Georgia beating Texas 35-10 down in Athens?
Mike, let's start with Georgia. I think this team is really scary. If you're Ohio State or any other team in college football, I think there's a case that Georgia might be the best team in the country, or certainly maybe the best team in the country outside of Ohio State right now. And I think just how this game played out was so fascinating. Georgia jumped out, they took the lead, Texas got that turnover, they cut it to a one-score game, and then there was the 3 consecutive touchdown drives. It's like every time Texas had a chance to get back in it, Georgia put its foot down and took control of the game. And Mike, to your point, I did not think Arch Manning played bad. I thought he played really solid on Saturday. He has basically no help right now. Ryan Wingo and some of these receivers with the drop passes they had this year, the offensive line continues to struggle. I think, 3 games against Georgia combined, they have under 100 rushing yards. So, I mean, you could put Pat Mahomes, you could put Josh Allen, you could put Tom Brady back there. Whoever you want to put back there, if they're not catching the ball, you got no help, and you're being asked to win a lot on 3rd and longs. That's a really tough spot for any quarterback. So I actually thought of the problems that Texas had on Saturday night, Arch is at the bottom. To me, it's the offensive line, receiving core. Also think this defense has been taking on a little bit of water the last couple of weeks. 3 straight games, they've given up 30 or more points. I thought also Gunnar Stockton, played a really efficient game. I think he's maybe the most underrated quarterback in the country right now.
Yeah, I think that's fair, Stephen. And that last point on Texas, I think, is kind of the most interesting one. The Texas defense looking all out of sorts, a lot of busted coverages, critical fourth down late in the 3rd quarter. They just kind of left McCray, I think it was, wide open there for an easy conversion. That, to me, is the biggest surprise. With all this, I really respect their defensive coordinator. They got all this talent. And for any misevaluations they may have on offensive line or at receiver, it's got nothing to do with the defense. Do you think that's perhaps why this Texas team is, not quite living up to the expectation? Do you think the defense in particular, do you think they're kind of at a point where, I don't know, like maybe they've been carrying this team for all season, and it's so difficult to do that for 12 games?
That's a really good question. I think one thing that was alarming to me in that game was all the communication issues that they were having at times. It's like you've got a veteran coordinator in Kwiatkowski, you've got guys in the defense, and they had some turnover from last season, but you're talking like 10th game of the season. And yeah, Tap's been out, but those communication issues and showing up in that kind of a spot were really concerning to me. I think to answer your question, I think they've had a lot of pressure on this defense. The offense has kind of come around a little bit the last couple of weeks. So I don't necessarily think maybe that the dam kind of broke here on the defense. I think they're still a really solid group, but they just have not played quite up to the level I think we saw. It is really tough to be a dominant defense week in and week out. So maybe to answer your question a little bit more, there is a lot of pressure on this group to be perfect every week, and it's hard. Whereas I think Georgia's playing complementary football. I mean, they only had 128 rushing yards, but they were a lot of hard-earned yards against a good front. And Stockton, with the efficiency and what he was able to do in the passing game, combined with Georgia's pass rush showing up for one of the first times this year. That complimentary football showed up for Georgia, and it's kind of been missing for Texas this season.
Mm-hmm. Hey, shout out the legend. Cousin Rick gave us a donation.
It's Texas A&M's biggest fan, Cousin Rick. Gig 'em, Aggies.
Love Stephen Lassan every week, says Rick. I'm rewatching the Aggie game. How many times do you think he's watched it, Stephen? 5 or 6? Especially looking forward to the Beamer interview. Thank you, Cousin Rick. And for Cousin Rick, and don't let his donation skew this, Stephen, unless you really want to. But A&M, obviously he's an A&M fan, or Georgia. If you had to pick one, head-to-head, let's say SEC championship game, today, who would you pick to win that game? Because I'm just kind of curious who you think, and you reserve the right to change your opinion, if that's a game we get. But as of today, A&M or Georgia, who would you pick to win?
Appreciate you, Cousin Rick. Thanks for the kind words. I'm setting him up for this. Probably would take Georgia in a close one. Not a strong lean by any means.
Give him his money back, Stephen.
I mean, I think like a field goal game, don't you, Mike? I think it's probably pretty close. I don't know. What would you take, Georgia or Texas A&M?
That's a tough one. That would be a tough one, but I think I would take Georgia. Just for the slight advantage of Kirby Smart. As good as Elko's been, and he's probably SEC Coach of the Year, Kirby's slightly better there. He's multiple national champions, of course, many SEC championships. And I know he came up very flat in the playoff last year, but I think you're right about Gunner. I mean, he's nothing if not clutch. And that doesn't mean Marcel isn't. He sure as heck was clutch last weekend. He was clutch against Notre Dame. I mean, he's been clutch all season. But I thought this was an excellent point. Between all the profanities, Marler does make good points, guys. What game? I mean, how many games has A&M had a close one? I mean, only 2. And now that's a credit to them. That means they have an excellent football team, which should not be diminished for that. Meanwhile, Georgia, dang near all their games are close until the last couple of weeks. But there's something to be said for these playoff games, this SEC championship game. It's probably going to be close because these are really good teams. So proving it in a close game, slight edge Georgia.
Could also work in A&M's favor too, because of the close game they just played on Saturday. That was kind of like, looking at their season, they had played some one-sided games. They had played some, the last second game against Notre Dame. They kind of checked off a little bit of boxes there, and that kind of comeback was kind of like a missing piece in the season. Seems like every team has to kind of go through that. Let me ask you this question about the SEC championship game. Is there a matchup that you'd like to see of the teams that's eligible, or I should say still in the mix to get there?
Mm-hmm. Well, I know this is not what you're asking, but if I could do it fan-wise, I've said this already. I want A&M and I want Ole Miss, just because those fans have never been there. Yeah. So I think it would be phenomenal for them to get to experience it. And obviously one would have to win, so one would get their first SEC championship game victory. But you asked matchup-wise, I think I would kind of go, I might keep the same answer, Ole Miss, A&M. A&M, Georgia would be really good. Bama, Ole Miss is another good one. But, I think I might keep it the same answer. I think it might be A&M, Ole Miss.
I would like to see A&M, Ole Miss almost just for like new blood, like for new fan bases to get there in Atlanta. Nothing wrong with Alabama, Georgia. I mean, those have produced so many great games. Something different would be kind of, I think, cool for all the fan bases. I think A&M, Georgia, probably the best matchup though, right now. Shouldn't forget. I mean, I know Alabama lost a game, but they're still pretty good too this year. So let's not forget about them.
Well, yeah, let's get to that game. where shout out the Sooners, Stephen. Spoiler alert, they make an appearance in Stephen's playoff projections, 23-21, back-to-back, big-time road victories. And I know the Sooners got 2 home games upcoming, but they probably wish they were on the road because they can't be stopped, apparently, on the road this season. So, man, Stephen, how much of this surprise you? I believe, I asked you last time on Wednesday if there was going to be an upset, who's more likely to upset, Texas over Georgia or Oklahoma at Bama? I believe you said Texas.
I meant Oklahoma.
I set you up for that one, but hey, I picked against Oklahoma too. So
yeah.
This is, and we both had a close game. So not like it didn't stun us, but man, what a remarkable job by Brent Venables scheming up his defense. That was clearly the key to the game, and special teams. This team is peaking at the right time in defense and special teams, and I wouldn't say their offense is peaking, but they are playing better, I think. And if they can get that side of the ball going, watch out. They could do some real damage in the playoff.
Also, credit to Oklahoma for winning without R. Mason Thomas against one of the best offenses in the SEC on the road. That is a big time credit to the depth that Brent Venables has assembled on that defensive front. Mike, one of my favorite Sunday things to do is there's this Bill Connolly of ESPN does a like win expected, percentage, which is basically taking all the stats from the game and say, if you had the stats from this game, you would win X amount of times, like in terms of percentage. I know it's like a really nerdy thing, but it kind of tells you like, okay, did the stats add up to the scoreboard? And I found it remarkable that Oklahoma had a less than 5% chance of winning that game based upon how the stats were. So almost like statistically crazy that they won that game because of how it played out. But I think it gets at a couple of things, like winning on the margins. Like you said, special teams, getting a fumble, getting a long return to set up a score. Sandel's bombs once we talked about this on Wednesday, like, hey, if you feel one team on special teams, you feel good about Oklahoma's ability to make a couple plays in a tight game. Oklahoma had scoring drives of 23 yards, 31, 41, and 22. Their average field position was the 42-yard line. This is winning on the margins and doing exactly what you have to do in a tight game. They won the margins. They won special teams. They generated enough pressure on Ty Simpson. We talked about the lack of a running game. I thought that showed up for Alabama too. The offense wasn't great, but it doesn't matter when you're winning all those things like Oklahoma did. So the stats say Alabama should have won this game, Mike, but you do all the small things right like Oklahoma did to go with dominant defense, and you get a big-time win in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah. Hey, shout out Amanda. Appreciate the question. I thought this was a really good question, and I need to make a graphic of this just so we can reference it for the whole week. But if A&M loses to Texas, what would happen for us to not make the SEC championship game? And I don't know if you have this information in front of you, Stephen, or if you're aware of it, but I have it, and let me know if I'm incorrect. But yeah, A&M needs to win, obviously, and they're in against Texas. They'd be undefeated. But if they lose, which is her question, if they need Alabama to lose in the Iron Bowl, and they need Ole Miss to lose the Egg Bowl. And that's the path for A&M to get into the SEC championship game if they lose to Texas. So they would need upsets, obviously, but that's what I have it as.
Man, yeah, that's what I had too, Mike. I mean, it's almost remarkable they could go from being the clear like front runner at the top of the conference to maybe missing the SEC championship game and needing a upset in one of those rivalry games to get back to Atlanta. So, I mean, they're in a good spot here, but still work to do against Texas.
Mm-hmm. All right, Stephen, we've got other games to hit on. So how about, we'll get to the drama here in a minute, but let's pull a Kiffin. Let's not be disrespectful, even though he's going to troll his fan base for 48 hours. Let's not do that, Stephen. Let's focus on the action on the field. Ole Miss takes care of Florida, 34-24, improves to 10-1. And this was a tight ball game that Florida had their opportunities, but once again, Ole Miss comes up ahead. They've got quite a program down there in Oxford right now.
Mike, the first thing that came to my mind while watching that game was the term, you and I have talked about every week, which is finish the job. Ole Miss was so close to making the playoff last season, and they fell short because they couldn't finish the job in November. But as I was watching that game and they jumped out to a 10-0 lead, I thought, this is it. We talked about the spread being 2 touchdowns just over that on Wednesday. I thought Ole Miss has jumped out to a big lead. They got this awesome crowd. They are just going to dominate. And they didn't do it. And credit to Florida for fighting back. And I wondered what kind of fight we would see from Florida, given how they kind of packed it in Lexington a week before. But also, I think it showed a couple things that Ole Miss needs to do a little bit better as we get closer to the playoff. Number one, they got to finish drives. You get to the goal line, don't end up with points. Big negative. Kicking field goals instead of scoring touchdowns. That's how a game that you outgained your opponent by almost 200 yards ends up being a 1-score game in the fourth quarter and needing a late score to make it 34-24. So Ole Miss didn't necessarily close the door when they could have, but credit to Florida for fighting. And also, how about Kewan Lacey and the job that he has done this year? I think flying under the radar, but man, on Saturday night, 224 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns. Also, credit to the Ole Miss defense for stepping up in the second half. Game was kind of in the balance. They got the stops they needed. Lacey, Chambliss getting the plays on offense to finally close the door and get Ole Miss to the doorstep of the playoff.
Yeah, and could a case be made, Stephen, that Kewan Lacey is the MVP of this team? I know we all look at the quarterbacks, and that's not a slight at Old Trinidad, who's been playing extremely well, and he has obviously been a catalyst for this 10-1 start to the season. But I would argue Lacey's more important and was kind of, it's kind of cheap to say this, but if they would have had him last year, I think they would have made the playoff and they may have won the whole thing, because that's kind of what they were missing was a big time running back. But I believe he leads the nation in missed tackles forced. Could you make the argument that Lacey is the MVP of Ole Miss?
Mike, I think he definitely is, because I go back to exactly what you and I talked about last season with this team is, there was kind of that inability to finish drives at times, and using defensive players as running backs is pretty fun. But at the same time, though, you need somebody who can get that 4th and 1. It's 3rd and 2. You got to get it. And also Lacey has the ability to do that, plus turn a 2-yard gain into a 50-yard touchdown. So I think he absolutely is the MVP. And if maybe this isn't fair to Chambliss, but if you're asking me, like, if I had a vote in their banquet, I would say I think Ole Miss can win with Simmons, and I think they can win with Chambliss. I wonder what the drop-off would be if you didn't have Kewan Lacey in some of these games. So I think he's absolutely the MVP.
Right. And then if he's not the best running back in the Southeastern Conference, Stephen, that would be Mr. Ahmad Hardy. Come on, 300 rushing yards against Mississippi State. He's still running. They were trying to get him the record. Shout out. I mean, it was comical that he was still in the game. But I get it. We're playing for records these days. But a solid performance. And I've been saying for a while, Stephen, on all these shows, I think this was like a culture win. And I know there's a big divide for Mississippi State and Missouri, as there should be. But, there was reason to believe that Missouri would go in the tank. There was reason to believe Mississippi State would fight their hearts out because this is their best shot to make a bowl game. Yet Missouri dominated because they're the better team, and their defense is significantly better than Mississippi State's. But I just thought this was a big-time culture win and a nice showing for Drinking Company.
Yeah, 100%, especially when you come off the loss last week and it basically knocks you out of playoff contention. And so you wonder, okay, what's the response going to be? Because at this point, you're just playing for, the ReliaQuist Bowl, the Music City Bowl, like a bowl game. Whereas if Missouri had beaten Texas A&M, this team would still have a shot to be in the playoffs. So, Mike, I think to your point, the response by Missouri, it was fairly convincing. And I think it goes back to what we talked about on the prediction show, line of scrimmage. Ahmad Hardy did some damage against the Mississippi State front, Mike. And I'm also thinking of the not safe for work things that Kevon Lacey's going to do to this in the Egg Bowl, depending on how things may shake out there. But it's line of scrimmage. It's the way that Ahmad Hardy was able to run the ball. It's the way they were able to pressure Blake Shapen and that Mississippi State offensive line. And of course, the 2 touchdowns on defense too. So the culture win, the edge at the line of scrimmage, and also I thought Matt Zoller's bounced back to some extent, after the showing against A&M. So a good win for Missouri, considering what happened the week before, to get back in the win column.
Mm-hmm. Interesting question here from Fatal Recoil. Appreciate the donation, Fatal. Hello, SEC Wizards. I think he's talking to you there, Stephen, you old wizard. Assuming Drink splits out of Mizzou, do we think we hang on to the young offensive guys we have? We will have $1.5 million back when Bo leaves. He should be back at that price. I'll bring in Mike McDaniels from Miami. Whoa, we're getting crazy here. But, that's an interesting question. It's kind of a very difficult one to answer. But, we'll see where Drink goes. We'll see where they have in terms of resources and NIL. But I don't know. You tell me, Stephen, if I'm being crazy here. But I've said this with Lane Kiffin. I'll say the same thing with Drink. And fans, that again, they seem to not wrap their heads around all this stuff. But I don't think we live in this time where like all these players are like, oh, I can't wait to follow Drink, or I can't wait to go follow Kiffin. I think the next coach at Missouri, and if Drink even leaves, we don't know that he's leaving. We don't know that Lane Kiffin's leaving. But the next coach at Ole Miss, the next coach at Missouri, if those coaches leave, I think they are walking into one hell of a program, a job, because we have seen it, Stephen, where the program will give you what you need in terms of NIL. Literally everything these 2 guys have pretty much asked for, they've been provided. I think the next coach is getting that, and including that NIL war chest, that if they can pay these players what they're already paying them, I think they hold on to a vast majority of them. What's your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, I would agree. I think the big, let's just say if Drinkwitz was to leave, one of the big advantages that the next coach would have is that the foundation is already set up for portal and high school recruiting. You're not having a coach come in and say, I've got to fight for resources. I got to go get X amount of $1 million. It's already set up. And, I always think about this, and it's always amazing to me that athletic directors are so terrified of hiring a coach and having them leave, because if a coach does a good job and leaves, the next guy is inheriting a better situation automatically. I mean, there's a chance that Missouri could, if they pull off an upset, obviously they're not favored this weekend. They could still win 9-10 games this year. I mean, to be a consistent 8, 9, 10 win team, to be in the top 25. And also, if I'm pitching this job, I'm going, Texas Tech is probably going to win the Big 12. You've got Indiana making the playoff. Ole Miss is on the doorstep of making the playoff. We can do this too. We can invest. We can do this, make the playoff too. So, I mean, I think I've always thought Missouri is a pretty attractive job, given location, given access to talent and the resources. And, I think somebody, I know we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but like someone like Alex Golish could be a good fit there. If Drinkwitz leaves, Missouri will get a good coach. I have no doubt.
And I also have no doubt, Stephen, that Cousin Rick is a heck of an Aggie. Appreciate you, Rick. Another $20 donation. Desired championships? Aggies versus Georgia / Bama or Ole Miss. Whoever is playing best, regardless of who it is, I'll bet my kids and my grandkids, buddy, on the Aggies. Rest up and beat the hell out of Texas.
Hope Cousin Rick is taking advantage of that my bookie code here.
Yeah, he's fired up, as he should be. Only undefeated team in the conference. You know what?
Man, I mean, what a time it is for Texas A&M. I always think about, I hate to use what Kiffin says, like the good old days right now, but enjoy the ride. I mean, they're 10-0. They're going to be 11-0. They may be favored to beat Texas, I guess, depending on whatever, book you want to use. And they are certainly going to be in the playoff, barring some catastrophic event at this point. So the fact that they are on the doorstep of an SEC title game appearance, playoff appearance, man, enjoy the ride, and let's see where this goes, because I can't wait to see what happens in the playoff with A&M, Georgia, and all these teams.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of, I can't wait to see what happens, Stephen. I can't wait to see how you hype this one up and what happens with LSU and Arkansas. Both of them have head coaching openings, of course, but man, what a brutal watch this was.
It was brutal, Mike, but at the same time, this game played out exactly like we kind of anticipated, right? Somebody was going to lose in very, very painful fashion. That's just the way it's kind of gone this year. Unfortunately, Arkansas has kind of been on the end of most of those. But I thought after they started 14-0, I was like, man, credit to Arkansas for going on the road. Maybe LSU is just kind of flat. There's no fight in LSU. And then LSU turns around with the 16-0 scoring run. But I think the story of this game, Mike, is just the missed opportunities again for Arkansas, whether it was turnovers, not finishing drives in the red zone, a game where you had two interim coaches, not sure what the motivation is, not sure what the fight is going to be. LSU kind of maximized its opportunities in a very, very close game. So credit to both teams for fighting here, and also credit to LSU for finding a way to win in a, kind of sleepy day at Tiger Stadium.
Yeah. And then did you have any other thoughts on Tennessee, New Mexico State 42-9, or Kentucky, interestingly, 42 as well, over undefeated Tennessee Tech? Any thoughts on either one of these results?
Mike, I thought Tennessee didn't play its best game. I don't know if that's fair to say. I thought they could have played a little sharper, but also you wonder, like, what was their focus level for New Mexico State, given what's ahead with Florida and Vanderbilt? Maybe the good thing is you don't have to play your A game and you still beat somebody 42-9. That's a huge check for Tennessee. Also, credit to Kentucky. They're right there on the doorstep of a bowl game. I didn't think we'd be talking about this like back at the end of September, that they'd be sitting here at 5-5 with a chance to make a bowl game. So, Tennessee Tech was undefeated, and we talked about on the Wednesday show, like, didn't think their strength of schedule was all that great for an FCS team. So no surprise Kentucky took care of business, and also Cutter Boley continuing to play very well too.
Yeah. All right. So we got to move on, Stephen, because we still got so much to cover, but this has been getting out of hand. We led the show with it. I mean, I am, Stephen, I'm paying attention as best as I can to all this knowledge you're dropping. But every time I throw it to you, I'm also like jumping over to Twitter real quick to be like, has Lane Kiffin accepted a job yet? Because I need to know. But man, this is getting wild, Stephen. So, I had heard this morning that, and we shared it on the afternoon show, that there's a chance Lane Kiffin doesn't even stick around to coach in the Egg Bowl. And now we've got national reports that Kiffin has been essentially given a deadline by Ole Miss to make a decision by the Egg Bowl. So, man, where do you think all this is headed? This is totally unprecedented, and I feel bad for Ole Miss. Honestly, I feel bad a little bit for Kiffin. I know he could end this at any time, but I feel bad in the sense that it's not his fault that we got a transfer portal and signing in college football playoff, and they essentially drop it all at the same time before the season ends. I mean, it's kind of madness, and this is the madness that is bound to happen with this convoluted and insane schedule.
Yeah, if you haven't noticed, I've been checking over here and over here. Same thing as Mike over here, kind of like the computer's getting a workout over here, trying to make sure we're on top of everything tonight, Mike. But I think the timing of this really sucks, because we should be talking about, and not to echo something that Lane Kiffin said, we should be talking about this team and being a playoff contender. 10-1, historic season at Ole Miss. Kewan Lacey, the story of Trinidad Chambliss, and the story is Lane Kiffin right now. And I would echo 100% what you said, which is there is one man who can end this at any time. He has had multiple opportunities to do so, and he has not done it. And that is Lane Kiffin. At any point, he could say, I am going to be the Ole Miss coach in 2026. I am not going to Florida, and it would stop. So we can make some guesses, perhaps, as to why that's going on. I would say there could be some leverage, perhaps, that he's trying to get from one side or another. Maybe he truly doesn't know. But I think the deadline by Ole Miss is actually pretty smart, because at some point I do think you've either got to make a decision, because do wonder about distractions as you get a little closer to the playoff, and then having this go into December and potentially January. So I, like you, Mike, I am fascinated to see where this goes, because I think my opinion on where this is going has changed quite a bit in the last couple weeks, because he is not acting like a coach that is going to be at Ole Miss next year. That is my public read on the situation.
Right. So we've heard from one Stephen, and I thought this was interesting. Stephen Up said, not good giving an ultimatum. And I get it. I get that as well. But you have to think of it like this. Final game here, November 28th for Ole Miss in the Egg Bowl. And also Auburn. I'm just using them as an example because I don't know this for a fact. But Auburn, November 29th. Stephen, so because Auburn fired their coach, Hugh Freeze, thank the Lord. You've inspired me to be a better person, and you've helped the Southeastern Conference for dumping that loser.
Mike's always been a good person, at least to me. So
compared to Hugh Freeze, I'm a saint. But be that as it may, point being, Stephen, November 29th, Auburn season ends. There's a realistic shot by December 1st, they name a head coach, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if rumors are to be believed, and it's John Summerall, well, what if Ole Miss wants John Summerall?
Yeah,
they need to know that's why the ultimatum makes sense in a lot of ways, and I get it. I don't think they should do anything to derail a playoff bid, but what happens if they just wait it out and maybe they have a list of 3 or 4 candidates that they think would be excellent hires to replace Lane Kiffin, but they have to wait it out because they got Kiffin, and then all of those candidates get hired at LSU, at Auburn, at who knows where. You can't ask John Summerall to accept the Auburn job and give the opening press conference and then give him a call the next day and be like, hey, would you like to come to Ole Miss? Unless he's Hugh Freeze 2.0, has got no class, which I know he's not going to do that. Any coach with class is not going to turn around and be like, well, to hell with the press conference I just gave. I'm going to Ole Miss. You know what I mean? So in a sense, Ole Miss has to know because they've got to make a hire.
There's a story, I think Arkansas fans may remember this one. Dana Altman, who was the head coach basketball at Oregon, actually accepted the Arkansas basketball coaching job and then left a couple of days later to go back to Oregon. So to your point, like that is a very rare scenario in coaching to see somebody, accept a job and want to go somewhere else. So I think that gets at the bigger picture thing here, which is, I'm just thinking, okay, if Lane Kiffin was to go, who would be the top candidates? Like, to me, it's Summerall. Like, it could be an Alex Golish. Both those guys could end up somewhere else. So if you're waiting till December or January, I still think you can hire a quality head coach, but your top options are going to be off the board. And I still think there is this distraction angle. I know Ole Miss looked pretty locked in on Saturday night, but if this continues to the Egg Bowl, you also have signing day too coming up. I think it's December 3rd. So I think you've got to have some clarity here about what's going on here, because you got the Egg Bowl, you got signing day, and you got the playoff. And I think you got to know at some point, is Kiffin recruiting for Ole Miss? Is he preparing for Florida? Is it LSU? So I understand like the ultimatum could be maybe it creates a little bit of hard feelings, but I think just given the calendar, and yes, it sucks that that's the calendar, I think it's just Ole Miss has to protect itself in this too. And so I don't blame him at all for saying like, look, by the Egg Bowl, we've got to know what the situation is here, because if you're leaving, then we got to get John Summerall on the phone after the game to see if he wants to be the head coach here.
Right. And in addition to obviously the coaching angle, Ole Miss, clearly, people just think it's Lane Kiffin for some reason. They got a whole operation over there with NIL, the scouting department, with everything that goes on with that. Now, he's probably going to try to take as many of those people as he can, but he's probably not going to take them all. And guess what? Florida and LSU, they got those people already too. You know what I mean? So they've got to figure out what they're going to do NIL wise with what players are they going to target. You can't just. I know the portal is in early January, right? You can't be the day before and be like, oh, okay, we got $20 million, let's go spend it. Like a lot of these decisions are already made. They're just waiting for it to be official. So the sooner the better for Ole Miss to kind of figure out which direction they want to go, what players they want to keep or try to do their best to keep. I mean, there's just so much. Again, I don't think this is Kiffin's fault, and it's not Ole Miss's fault, but this is the reality of college football with the schedule, which is what they need to do is fix the schedule.
Yeah.
But I don't know how they're not going to, and I don't know if they ever will.
Think about how awkward it would be if Ole Miss didn't put down the gauntlet and you go into that first playoff game and Ole Miss beats Georgia Tech. It's in Oxford, and the questions after the game is, well, the Florida job's still open, Lane. Are you interested or not? Are you still taking it? And we get to the second round, and Ole Miss beats whoever, and it's like, hey, that Florida job's still open. Think about
it's the only one open. You know?
Right. It's super, super awkward that there's nobody else connected to it, the exception of Lane Kiffin, and it's open. So I think that's why it's kind of smart at some point, like just given the calendar and given how awkward this could get, it is smart to sort of put like a deadline on this. I mean, let's also think about this, Mike. Ed Orgeron and Hugh Freeze are both available to be interim coaches for the playoff for Ole Miss.
That's true.
I'm kidding.
Bring it on in here. Come on. Get Saban while we're at it. You know what?
Totally kidding. But yeah, that would not be a worst case scenario for Ole Miss to go into the playoff without Lane Kiffin. And especially because they are on track to host a playoff game. It is a massive, massive opportunity to sell the program and to be front and center on a Friday night, Saturday afternoon, to host a playoff game, to win one, to maybe go to the second round. And, think about the boost that Ole Miss could get out of this. The portal opening up, they're still playing. I mean, there's a lot at stake for this program. So I hate the timing of this all, but I think you have to have some closure sooner rather than later.
And then imagine, now, would this really happen? Probably not. But imagine a scenario, Stephen, where Kiffin leaves prior to the playoff. I would imagine most, if not all, the assistants would stay, the critical ones, and insert Joe Judge or something. I mean, it literally doesn't matter, but I'm saying Joe Judge. Let's say Joe Judge is the head coach, former NFL head coach. For anybody unaware, he's on staff down there as an analyst, I think. What if they win the national championship with Joe Judge? I mean, you got to turn around and make him the head coach, don't you?
I think the verdict would be in, right?
I see what you did there. Brilliant.
Yeah.
And then we'd say, well, hell, we just saved us $15 million. We don't need old Lane Kiffin. You know what?
Yeah, man. Talk about awkward and talk about, great to win a national championship. I don't think you want Joe Judge being your head coach long term, but yeah, great to win a national championship if you could. That's the unfortunate thing, right? Is that it's not unrealistic to dream that Ole Miss could actually make a run in the playoff if Lane Kiffin is the head coach.
What is it that you got against Joe Judge? I'm just curious. Was he just an abject failure in the NFL?
He was pretty bad in the NFL, yeah.
Because I will point to you, Stephen, another failed NFL coach, at least the first time around, that became elite in college. And this is silly to, equate the two. But how about Pete Carroll? He was awful in the NFL. He tucked tail and went to college. Obviously did a fantastic job for Southern Cal. And then he became a very good, successful head coach in the NFL. But maybe he's just Pete Carroll 2.0. Come on. All back to Lane Kiffin.
I thought you were going to go with Kiffin as the coach that flots in the NFL. I know it's the Raiders.
That's true, too.
Al Davis fired him over like the overhead projector, so I don't know. I mean,
And he coached under Saban. Saban did the same thing. He failed in the NFL.
There you go. That all comes back to Joe Judge and Pete Carroll, right?
Serial killer says, Amazon driver reporting new address for drop-off, fake tan spray, yoga mats, Florida zip code, Lane gone, folks. You heard it there first.
That's good. That is good. Was it after the Auburn thing there was a tea time that was supposedly canceled on Hugh
Well,
Freeze that Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh. I don't think Kiffin golfs, but maybe somehow, some way we can get on the yoga schedule. See if he drops yoga down at Oxford Yoga, whatever it is, Oxford Hot Yoga. If he's not on the schedule next week, we'll know something's up.
And he would probably cancel to troll us all, right? Like it would be like Kiffin's canceled and he's really just signing the extension just because I do think there is an element of the meme. It's like this is fine, and there's like the dog sitting there with everything the world's on fire. He's probably enjoying this, don't you think, to some extent?
Oh yeah, he's a I don't know if egomaniac's the right word, but I think that's probably appropriate.
I think that's playing a role in all this too. I think knowing you've got some time to make a decision, knowing that you could do a little trolling, knowing that both fan bases are super engaged, I could see him maybe playing this up a little bit like this, playing fans and us media too.
I'm trying to figure out this question. Shout out Ikini Obi. Appreciate you. If give Lane an ultimatum and lose in the first round by 14 plus, imagine how terrible that will look. Recruiting portal, future coach. I mean, yeah. I mean, I agree. I mean, it'd be a bad look. But again, I don't know. I mean, we've kind of laid it out for you. What can you do? You can just sit on your hands and hope he stays. If Lane Kiffin does not stay and leaves mid-January, Ole Miss they're kind of screwed in the interim, don't you think?
Yeah, I do. Especially hypothetically, let's say with the second you have the games on January 1st. The semifinals are like the 9th and 10th or something like that this year. Let's just say they made it that far. They lose. You would be hiring a coach maybe January 16th or so. That's like way after the portal opened. And it'd be almost the closing time for the portal.
Right.
I think Kiffin is worth quite a bit to this Ole Miss team. If they, hypothetical scenario, he leaves, they're still in the playoff. I think they could win a game. I don't think I'd pick them to go very far, though. I think they'd miss him at some point. If he's the head coach, you can bet that I would be considering them to make a pretty decent run. I think he's that valuable. I think, and I think maybe to answer the question, I think whoever the next head coach is also, it's much like Missouri. They are inheriting a very, very attractive job. And every job has its shortcomings. Kiffin's been on the fans about, filling the stadium or whatever. But they've been one of the leaders in the NIL and the transfer space. So if you're already inheriting the groundwork is laid to be a good team, you almost made the playoff last year. You're likely going to make it this year. You're stepping into a really solid situation. So, I think you're kind of caught here. It's like if you're Ole Miss, if you let this go on, you're screwed maybe 2026 and in some extent 27. But if you maybe, I don't know. It's a really tough spot for Ole Miss to be in. I think at some point, like I said, they have to have some closure. The longer this goes on, I think the longer it makes things very awkward for the season and potentially hurts your recruiting and transfer portal.
Yeah, and the only way I could see this working out for Ole Miss if they delayed that long, Stephen, and I don't know that there is a candidate that fits this criteria, but hiring like Indiana did that guy, I don't even know his name. What's his name?
Signetti?
Yeah, who he can bring his entire roster. or Charles Huff, how he did and brought his roster essentially to Southern Miss. And that's significantly more difficult in the Southeastern Conference because you're going up against the elite rosters. But you'd have to hire, again, I don't even know who that would be. Ryan Day? You ain't getting him, but like someone like that. And then the portal would open up when they get a new coach and he can recruit his roster to Ole Miss. That's literally the only way I could see this working out if you delayed that long.
Yeah.
Maybe a Lincoln Riley. I don't know. I mean, that's the only path I could see to Ole Miss having success. And it would be because the coach that's leaving his old roster would be able to enter the portal once a new coach was hired, and they could all follow him. That's the only path I see.
Mike, the one concern about that would be is if you're hiring like a G5 coach, there is a chance those rosters have been picked over by then. A lot of those guys, I mean, it's hard to keep. I mean, you talk about just NIL resources, it's a couple million compared to like 15, 20 for some of these SEC teams. So keeping a roster together, given what offers are going to be there, and think about that too. What offers are there on day one may not be there on day 8 for some players. So there's going to be an incentive to get in, take the best offer, and get out of the portal. So that would be a little bit of a word of caution, I think, for Ole Miss trying to bank on that. The other scenario could be, would Pete Golding or Charlie Weiss Jr. be an option to be head coach?
I don't think that's off the table, no.
It's not as fun, or as, I guess, not as a slam dunk as like John Summerall would be. But at least you keep the structure and perhaps you keep some people there.
Yeah, no, I again, that makes sense. But I almost think the job is like too good for those guys, if that makes sense.
Yeah, first time head coach in the SEC and navigating high expectations. Yeah, it's a tough spot.
I think Kiffin has made that job, and not just Kiffin, but perhaps more importantly, the structure in place with the administration, the NIL. Walker Jones is a guy's name that runs the collective. I mean, no one does a better job. I don't think. Literally anyone. Now, you could say Texas and Oregon and A&M and Tech. Well, it's just because they got insane amounts of money. And for the dollar, and I know Ole Miss spending a lot of money, but no one does a better job, in my opinion, for what they have to spend.
Absolutely. I mean, Mike, I think they were one of the better teams in college football last year. I think they screwed it up by not getting to the playoff last year, because I think they could have won a couple games in the playoff. And I certainly think they can this year. But to be, I think if you 10 years ago may have made a list of the top like 30 jobs in college football, that list looks a lot different now because of NIL and portal. And I would guess wherever you had Ole Miss 10 years ago, it's probably changed quite a bit, just because they've been one of the leaders in adapting to this new era of college football and being able to say, we've invested in the NIL, we've invested to go get the players in the transfer portal. And look, we nearly made the playoff in 2024, and they should make it this year, barring something catastrophic happening.
Mm-hmm. All right, Stephen, they're calling it That Kiffin Podcast. So I think it's time to move on to something else until we have news. Oh, how about we get into your latest panic meter? Because we're reaching the end of the season, but I would still wager there are things to panic around in the Southeastern Conference that does not involve Lane Kiffin.
I got one good one. I got a good fastball tonight, so we'll save that one for the end of the panic meter. How about let's start with Texas, Mike? Because I want to pose a question, and you're the right man to help me answer this. Are you worried at all about the direction of Texas? And I'm not trying to overreact here, but when I say direction, I mean, are they going to be able to punch to get to that number one spot again under Sarkisian? Of course, we saw he's an offensive guy. I think their offense has been pretty disappointing. 11th in the SEC this year. Offensive line, did they not see this coming in the offseason? Did they just think that they could develop their way out of it? I think Arch has gotten a lot better, like I said, but I also think that he hasn't developed at the level I thought in the offseason. And of course, we talked about the defense giving up 30 points in 3 straight games. So I'm not necessarily worried, but to go from number 1 to 7-3 and potentially 8-4 and outside the playoff, I think is certainly disappointing. I don't know how worried I am in the big picture of that.
And shout out Professor Rufus. I bet you're really not a professor. But he says, what about these rumors? Sarkisian leaving. Talk about panic. Of course, they'd probably be happy to see his ass go after that performance. I kid. But yeah, And guess who would be candidate number one? Late. No, I'm just kidding. But he would be a candidate. Patience, where that? I mean, I think that's kind of crazy talk. He went to back-to-back semifinals. But obviously the NFL rumors, I don't think that went over well. I don't think they'll run him off. I don't think he'd get fired this year. Next year, we have another down year. That's a different Didn't they just give him an extension? Of course, that's never stopped someone from firing someone before, right? Yeah. But no, I truly don't think he'll get fired. I think he would leave for the NFL, though. But you said a lot there, Stephen. The offense has not been very good. Again, Marler curses a lot, but he also makes some good points, Stephen. He said this was two of the lowest offensive outputs, Ohio State and Georgia. Now, again, those are all the road, elite competition, and maybe you can fact check him off the top of your head because I call you the CFB encyclopedia for a reason. But he said those are the two lowest point totals of the Sarkisian era. I believe that's what he said, 10 and 7. Again, I can't remember if that's exactly what he said, but I think it was. But just point being, Stephen, that this has been a very, very off year for Sarkisian, misevaluating on the offensive line, and now this is 3 in a row to Georgia that you've been completely dominated. You've been out physicaled. You've been out coached. Heck, one of those, they didn't even have their starting quarterback for half the game because he got hurt. You still couldn't beat him. Now, a lot of teams in this conference, trust me, I'm well aware, it's got a Kirby Smart Georgia problem. Very, very, aside from Bama, basically no one can beat them. So shouldn't necessarily hold that over Texas' head because if it applies to literally everybody not named Alabama. But, yeah, I am a little bit worried, Stephen, that we've taken such a step back and maybe – no, they didn't like when we said this, but I think it was fair to question the gift of the schedule they got last year, and they got it again this year, and they've regressed with what they told us would be a major, major, major upgrade at quarterback. It hasn't looked like it, and I think the defense is arguably better this year, yet the results are not there because of Sarkisian, he's picking the players, they're running his scheme. The play calling's been questioned. They can't run the football. I'm not panicking on Texas, but I think the ship is pointed in the wrong direction, if that makes sense.
It does. And I think the Georgia example is exactly what I was wondering, is because to me, Georgia is the standard. And you look at how these last 3 matchups, I think it's fair to say they probably were physically dominated for the most part. Georgia won the physicality. I think if you wanted to make the case that Texas had a playoff shot at 9-3, it really resulted in, they needed to win one and lose the other one close. And so the fact that it wasn't close really takes any kind of opportunity out at 9-3. But there's a lot of things that I guess just don't add up to me about this team, because I think Archer's really talented. And the fact that, we're sitting here talking about the 11th scoring offense in the SEC. They can't run the ball. The offensive line has struggled. Receivers drop passes. I mean, it really raises the question of evaluation and what they missed on, and also tweaks offensively. You look at some of the numbers on Manning, and the average depth of target dropped the last few weeks, and the offense played better, like they were tweaking some things. So why weren't they doing this earlier? Like you said, and like we talked about with the game against Georgia, there's a lot of pressure on this defense to be perfect every week, and it's no surprise why, maybe they haven't. And certainly not having Michael Taft against, Vanderbilt and some communication issues. So I'm not necessarily panicked. I guess my question is, in a year where it's so wide open, a Texas team that had been to the doorstep of the college football national championship twice, and to regress like this, I think is a little concerning. I think Sark could easily get this team back on track, but I think it's fair to be a little bit worried if you're a Texas fan.
And if we sit back and look at as we rewind the season when it's complete, Stephen, again, I know we're living in the moment of getting dominated by Georgia, but I think without a shadow of a doubt, the one we're going to be upset about is the Florida
Mm-hmm.
getting out coached by Billy Napier's sorry ass.
True. Because just think about what that could mean. If Texas had beaten Florida, we'd be sitting here saying, oh, okay, if they just beat Texas A&M, they're in the playoff. Because, I mean, there's no shame in losing to the number one team by 7 points.
Right.
Certainly you would like the margin to be better than 35-10 against Georgia. But 8-2, and all you have to do is beat Texas A&M. That's very doable to get to the playoffs. So it's kind of another like missed opportunity. But on the other side of this too, Mike, I mean, they could have blown the game against Vanderbilt. They could have lost to Kentucky. They needed a crazy fourth quarter comeback to beat Mississippi State. So, I mean, I didn't get a chance to catch your name, but somebody said, yeah, they were my national championship pick. And boy, I was a total idiot on that one.
Well, you know how we could fix that, Stephen, to make you smart again?
I'm all ears, Mike.
Huel, go check them out. Huel's back for another week on the show. Stephen, I am loving my Huel. Go check Huel.com. This is meal replacement shakes. I had one this afternoon. I'm also fasting, so I think fasting, Huel, I mean, it's all helping me, Stephen. I feel sharp. I'm not tired. I'm usually, I hate to admit this, Stephen, because I always try to give 110%. Go back to last Monday night. I was dragging ass. I'm not anymore. Thanks to Huel. Huel.com, promo code that SEC to get you 15% off. I like them so much, Stephen. I told them on the afternoon show, I'm spending my own money because what they do is they always send us these products to try them out. I love them so much. I'm going to spend my own money to get some more Huel, and I'm going to use promo code THATSEC to get 15% off my meal replacement shakes. This is a complete meal, all the nutrients you need, 27 vitamins and minerals. I like the black edition. That's what they sent us. It's like their upper tier. They got chocolate peanut butter, strawberry banana, cookies and creamed, iced coffee. Come on. And they also sent over some daily greens in a can. I really like that as well. So maybe you're just trying to get all your 42 vitamins, only 25 calories, 1 gram of sugar. Go check them out, Stephen. Huel.com, promo code THATSEC to get 15% off. Get thin with me and Shane. Trust me, we're going to get thin one day, but we're going to get there quicker with Huel. And we're also trying to get there before Thanksgiving because we know we're going to fatten back up. You know what?
Mike, that's actually a great selling point for our friends over at Huel, right? You could kind of, cut back this week. It's like pre-gaming. It's like preparing. You're playing an FCS opponent this week. You want to fast, get right for next week's big game and the matchup for Thanksgiving. So, man, also, I know you're a busy guy. And this is like the perfect thing for us people like who are on the go. You don't have time to sit down and eat a meal.
Who's got time for that? You don't need it over at Huel.
Lane Kiffin needs him. His interview.
And then also back, Stephen, is Bubs, bubsnaturals.com. Promo code THATSEC, same promo code, but this one even a little bit better, Stephen. 20% off over at bubsnaturals.com. You got stiff joints, you're recovering from the gym, your hair's thinning, your nails are breaking, whatever ails you, Stephen, this collagen peptides will hook you up. Shane loves these bubs. He's gonna break it down. You should see his hair, Stephen. I mean, it's to his knees right now. He had to shave it off. Shout out this Bubs miracle stuff over here. And they also have electrolyte supplements, if that's your deal too. So go check them out. Bubsnaturals.com. Promo code THATSEC to get you 20% off these collagen peptides. Live better, longer, stronger. Thanks to bubsnaturals.com. Again, that promo code, same as the Huel. That SEC gets you 20% off. We're just trying to get healthy before, everybody starts January 1st, Stephen. We're starting at November 15th.
I was thinking, I read that story on, what was it, Yahoo last week about Lane Kiffin, about how he's in the greatest shape. He's doing the yoga. I'm thinking it's actually Bubs more than anything.
That and all this attention going straight to his ego.
Does Bubs help bad offensive lines in Austin?
I'll tell you what. I'll send Sark some. He'll report back. Right. All right, Stephen. Back to the panic meter. Aside from Texas, who else are you a little panicked on?
How about Tennessee, Mike? I mean, there's a big difference, I think, between 9-3 and 7-5. I know that may seem like Captain Obvious, but think about how this could look for Tennessee. There was the loss to Oklahoma in a very winnable game. They played okay against New Mexico State. And if you lose to this Florida team,
yikes,
and Vanderbilt beats you, 7-5. I know there's some frustration about Heupel. I think it's a little overblown, but man, this conversation about Tennessee could look a lot different in a few weeks. So I'm a little bit worried about this team coming down the stretch and trying to finish out the season at 9-3 as opposed to 7-5. Is that fair?
No doubt. And of course, we all know the Swamp is a house of horrors for them Vols. Haven't won there since it was 2003, I believe. And Florida ain't dead yet, Stephen. When they want to, they show up, they play well. They pushed Ole Miss on the road. Now, maybe they were just trying to impress their new coach. I don't know. But as long as DJ Lagway is not turning the ball over left and right, I think Florida's got a real shot. And guess who is turning it over left and right is our man Joey Aguilar, who, the production's there, but the turnovers are there as well. I've seen better Tennessee teams and worse Florida teams meet, and Florida always seems to find a way against these Vols. But the fact, I believe the line has shifted, but it was opened at around 2. I think it's closer to 5 now. But just given the fact this is a 1-point spread here for Tennessee at Florida, even though Tennessee's 7-3, Florida's 3-7. History has little bearing on a lot of these matchups, but I think on some of these, for whatever reason, it has a lot to do with it. And this one in particular, and I'll put it this way, Stephen. We had our buddy Nick Roush. We have him on the show weekly, the Roush Hour. He'll be back tomorrow. Tune in for that. But he was dancing on Florida's grave about how they whooped Florida 38-7, I think it was. And I said, buddy, never in my life, I've never experienced that. Tennessee's never beaten Florida by 30-something points that I can recall. That says it all, doesn't it? That Kentucky can do something that Tennessee can. And Kentucky's a 5-win team.
Yeah, it really does. I'll be honest, Mike, after that Kentucky game, I thought Florida had just packed it in for the season. Maybe we should have looked at a little closer the fact they played Georgia the week before, and it was, of course, the rivalry. They had to go to Lexington, and there was the crazy turnovers in that game, and things kind of spiraled out of control. So I think if I'm a Tennessee fan, my anxiety level is super high on Saturday for this game. It's everything that you said about matchup, records, where the season has gone, question marks for Florida. If I'm a Tennessee fan, I go, yeah, all that's in our favor. But at the same time, we've had other matchups where it's been in our favor and couldn't beat Florida. So, I'd be a little bit worried if I was Tennessee on Saturday night going to the Swamp, wouldn't you?
I'm always worried when I see that logo. I just have nightmares of it, Stephen. Doesn't matter, but particularly when they're playing Tennessee, and especially in the Swamp. Last year, Tennessee made the college football playoff, if you recall, and Florida was pretty awful. Probably should have fired their coach then, just delayed the inevitable. And yet they took Tennessee to overtime in Neyland Stadium with Graham Mertz, who maybe we'll look back at him as the best quarterback under Billy Napier. He was lost for the season tragically in that game. They had to throw DJ Lagway into it, true freshman, 100,000 screaming at him. Didn't matter. They still nearly beat Tennessee. So, I have no confidence that Tennessee is going to go down here and get the win. I really don't.
Also, not even the Florida game, Mike. And I would share your low confidence and probably I haven't locked in my picks for this weekend, but it is it's in the toss-up category. I need to think and process it. But just thinking about that game against Vanderbilt, and I think also where the narrative would be if Heupel and Tennessee lose that game to Florida. They turn around and lose to Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt's sitting there at 10-2 with a chance to make the playoff, and Tennessee is 7-5. And in fairness to Heupel, you lose your starting quarterback at the end of spring ball. You lose, 2 corners that were supposed to be starters. You got some guys banged up. I get all those things, but at the same time, if they don't finish this season on a high note, I do think the panic meter in Tennessee is going to start to go up next year.
It will. We got to prove Urban Meyer wrong. I don't know. Do you remember what he said?
Yeah, what was it that he said?
He basically, while the whole college football was saying good for Tennessee, standing up to Nico, Urban Meyer's dumb ass was like, "That's good and well, but what about Florida beats them week 3 of the season? He doesn't even know when the game's played." And I think he said on Rocket, like he had the location wrong, he had the date wrong. But point being, that's fantastic. If you're still losing games, no one's going to give you credit for kicking Nico out the door, which in a sense, he may be right. You know what I mean?
I think Tennessee's been fine at quarter. I mean, obviously Aguilar made the mistakes against Oklahoma, so maybe that's not the right thing to say, but
Right.
I don't think quarterback play is necessarily Tennessee's biggest issue. That's
right. No, that's fair. It's certainly not, but again, we just can't let evil like Urban Meyer win. You know what I mean? That's the whole moral of the story, regardless of how it happens.
So Tennessee winning on Saturday night could be good for Heupel, but also just for making Urban Meyer very sad, and maybe some pictures of him eating like sad pizza in the corner again.
And just karma in general. You know what?
Right. Yeah, that would be a good win for Tennessee to kind of like get rid of some of those demons in the swamp. You go down there and yes, Florida's, well, I guess that'd be the narrative. It's like, well, it's not a great year for Florida. So it doesn't, Tennessee can't beat Florida when they're at their peak, but that'd still be a good program win for Josh Heupel.
Well, not only that, but again, unless you hate Tennessee, and I know there's a lot of haters out there, or just you love Florida, which is obviously fine. But I'm rooting also for this Tennessee Vanderbilt game it should already have a ton of juice, but if Tennessee's limping into this, another humiliating defeat to Florida, I don't know how much hype, and even Vanderbilt, if Vanderbilt loses to Kentucky, which I'm not predicting any of these games right now, but I think if you want Vanderbilt, Tennessee to have as much juice as possible, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I think if trying to build up like that week 14, if we want the stakes to be high, Tennessee coming in motivated, ready to beat Vanderbilt, sort of continue their domination of the series, but also for Vanderbilt to be sitting there at 9-2 and say, if we win this game, we got a shot to make the playoff. And so I mean, it's kind of funny to think about it. Is like, if I'm Vanderbilt, you kind of almost like expect to win that Tennessee game this year, just because
I think that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, that's like not happening very often in the series.
Hey, shout out Cousin Tony, comment of the night so far. I 100% agree with this. Bring Billy Napier back just for this week. I mean, to my knowledge, he's the only Florida coach with a losing record against Tennessee since Spurrier, so he shall be missed on Rocky Top. You know what?
I was a little worried when I saw he was at Georgia's practice last week.
Hey, Steven, shout out. He gifted 2. I want to give him a shout out here. All Day Trey. He has gifted Mellow Yellow. I love that old drink. And Joshua Hurt. Mellow Yellow and Joshua, welcome to
the family.
Yeah, courtesy of All Day Trey. All right, panic meter. Anyone else on the panic meter, Steven?
What about Alabama, Mike, and playoff hopes? I'm actually kind of panicked about this, and I'd set the meter pretty high, maybe at level 10. Maybe I'm overreacting, but I don't love the setup for Alabama going into that season finale against Auburn. Certainly not predicting they're going to lose, but at the same time, Auburn has nothing to lose in that game. Crowd, defensive line for Auburn. If Alabama doesn't figure out its running game, playing Auburn in a rivalry game with nothing to lose, man, that's risky for Alabama. And if I'm Kalen DeBoer's, like, I better beat Auburn in 2 weeks. So this thing, you can talk about having some angry fans. That will ramp up the pressure real quick.
Yeah, and all of a sudden, Stephen, we have been removed from this because they've been doing so well. But DeBoer struggles against these unranked teams. Check. On the road. Check. Now, again, he cured a lot of that this year, right? But before, and quite frankly, almost blew it against Carolina. And Missouri was very tight as well. But, that was the thing last year. And buddy. I think without a doubt he has shown himself to be a good coach this year. But it's really the overall record that we're going to be viewed as, right? What if we lose defensive coordinator Womack to Arkansas? That's been a hot rumor. What if we lose Ryan Grubb? It's a very hot rumor, Stephen, that he will be the next Washington coach if that job opens. So, if we're sitting here and we're having to replace both coordinators and we just missed the play, imagine, Stephen, being undefeated in Southeastern Conference play by November 15th and then missing out on the playoff by November 30th. That's not going to go over very well. And my man, DeBoring, is going to be sitting on one of, if not the hottest seats in the SEC heading into the 26th season.
No question, Mike, because it'd be 2 years of just missing the playoff if they fall short this year. And, the comeback from the Florida State game has been great. But if they don't finish the job, and to be sitting here saying they've now had 2 years of high roster talent and to fumble it, where Ty Simpson could be a Heisman finalist, and last year they had the roster talent to make the playoff, falling way short of expectations, and also in some of the fashion, sort of like underachieving, and again, the game against Vanderbilt last year, the Oklahoma no-show. Yeah, I talk about hot seat. I think 9-3 back-to-back years. I know it's very difficult to live up to the Nick Saban level. At the same time, though, I think 9-3 and missing the playoff 2 years in a row would be definitely hot seat. Close, I guess, adjacent conversation.
Hey, breaking news, Stephen. Read into this what you will. It's not the breaking news we were anticipating, so you can calm down here. Lane Kiffin, multiple retweets right now about the Egg Bowl and how hyped up, all these people are. So he's actively, is he trolling? I don't know. But again, reading the cryptic Kiffin tweets sounds like he's pretty fired up for the Egg Bowl. So think about it. What does it mean? I don't know. Is he actively in Baton Rouge tweeting about Ole Miss? I wouldn't put it past him. You know what?
Having dinner maybe somewhere at like a steakhouse back room, retweeting. They're exchanging contract numbers.
Jimmy Sexton probably told, hey, Kiffin, Lane, retweet about this Egg Bowl.
Right.
We need LSU to up their ante. You know what?
That would be something, right? To summon Lane or a staffer. Hey, why don't you retweet some things to get like these pictures of like these airplanes off the timeline and get people talking about the Egg Bowl and not these coaching rumors. Yeah, nice try, right?
All right, Stephen. Anyone else on the panic meter?
I got something special for SEC Mike because he had a tough playoff last year. So I just want to set the panic meter of the public, perhaps some of Mike's good friends in the Big Ten, that the SEC is trending towards 5 teams in the playoff. So if you're SEC Mike, you're happy. If you're an SEC hater, you're not very happy right now. You're in meltdown mode. And boy, do I see it online every day. So I just wanted to set Mike's panic meter at 1 and the public at 10, because Mike is ready to do some trolling if that's the case later this season.
Oh, no doubt. And I think that's a natural transition to get to your updated SEC playoff and bowl projections, Stephen. Shout out, Stephen. He's back on the right side. He's with the good guys. He's no longer in the evil land. He's got 5 Southeastern Conference teams projected to make the college football playoff. A&M, of course. Alabama remains, despite the loss, which I think that's accurate. Georgia, Red Hot Georgia, Ole Miss, and Oklahoma making the jump up into the land of the college football playoff. Still don't like Stephen Vanderbilt being on the outside looking in, but I would imagine, my words, not yours. You can explain it, but they are far from eliminated from the conversation. What went into these 5 making the college football playoff in your updated projections?
Some good and some bad, right, Mike? Not the 6 that you wanted with Vanderbilt, but I do think Vanderbilt probably needs a break or two to make the playoff. And when you start looking at the field, it's starting to kind of, I think, form that unless there's a couple upsets, it feels like the spots are kind of taken up. Notre Dame beating Pittsburgh on Saturday was significant because they get Syracuse and Stanford the next 2 weeks. They're probably in. The ACC is probably getting one. I think at large spot, especially referring to Vanderbilt, BYU is probably ahead of Vanderbilt in the committee's mind. So absent a couple upsets, it's just really hard to get to a path that Vanderbilt could get there. Now, the easiest path will not happen. So I would just say if you're a Vanderbilt fan, all you can do is just keep winning and see what happens. But Mike, feel good about those 5 teams in the SEC from the SEC getting to the playoff right now. Alabama, Oklahoma, not as much wiggle room. Georgia, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, a lot more room. And frankly, you could probably move them into the locks category. Also, how about welcome Kentucky to the bowl projections this week, Mike? So feeling good about 5 teams making the playoff and also potential for a 6th in Vanderbilt. Little bit of a stretch to get there on Texas, given how Saturday's game played out. But certainly a lot of scenarios still in play here.
Right. So in Steven's updated SEC bowl projections, he alluded to Kentucky in the Liberty Bowl against Cincinnati. The Mayo Bowl's got Missouri, Louisville, ReliaQuest Bowl, Tennessee, Nebraska, Citrus Bowl, Texas versus Michigan, Music City Bowl, LSU and Minnesota, Gator Bowl, Vanderbilt, Miami, Texas Bowl, Mississippi State, TCU. So let me ask you this, Steve. Not that I'm rooting for this because I don't want to see any of these SEC teams get knocked from the playoff projection, but going back to Vanderbilt, what would happen in a scenario where, say, like an Oklahoma gets upset against Missouri or LSU, doesn't matter which one? Is that a path for Vanderbilt leapfrogging Oklahoma, or would they just find a way to put one of those teams you referenced that is currently ahead of Vanderbilt in the rankings?
It's a good question. So they were 14th in the playoff rankings last week, which is behind BYU in Utah. This is the committee's words, not or rankings, not mine. Utah is probably going to win out. BYU plays at Cincinnati this week. That is probably their best chance to lose. I think if I'm a Vanderbilt fan, I think you probably need both of those teams to lose, because I think the schedules are probably not going to give a team like if Vanderbilt played Oklahoma, that's a chance to jump up. I don't know there's going to be enough there. The committee seems set on that BYU, Utah, Vanderbilt order, probably not going to change this week. So I think they would need Oklahoma to lose, but also probably need a BYU and a Utah loss to get into the conversation. So it's not out of the question. It's just that by the committee's rankings, they're kind of locked in behind some teams in the at-large order here.
Right, right. Or what about Alabama losing the Iron Bowl? I would assume that would probably eliminate them from the playoff, because they have the head-to-head loss. That could help Vanderbilt, couldn't it?
Yeah, it could. That's a good point, Mike. I guess the question, so when I was looking at how some of these scenarios could play out, Alabama, of course, could still play for the SEC championship game. But if there's other chaos, Alabama having the head-to-head win over Vanderbilt, would that come into play given that Alabama would have lost to a then 6-6 Auburn team? My guess is that probably you'd have to say the committee probably would side Vanderbilt there, wouldn't you?
I would think so.
Alabama's got great wins. I should say their resume is pretty solid, though.
Right. I'm just looking for any path possible to get Vanderbilt. I mean, we got to get Vanderbilt in there, Stephen. If they're 10-2, I don't care about BYU, Miami, none of these garbage teams. They didn't go through the SEC, and you can mock Vanderbilt's strength of schedule, but hey, they're playing same thing Texas would say last year. We played the teams on the schedule. You know what? So I don't know. I mean, I'm putting Diego in.
I mean, to me, there's no shame in being a 10-win team from the SEC, regardless of how the schedule breaks down. And for historical purposes, for Vanderbilt to be at the bottom and to be at the on the doorstep of making the playoff, a loss to Alabama, a loss to Texas, like there's no shame in their season. So I think their path looks a little difficult right now, but we always see there's an upset or two that shakes it up late in the season. So I would not assume that this is going to be the way it plays out. Heck, Mike, we were 30 minutes away from Texas A&M losing, South Carolina being in the bowl projections, and thinking, okay, what does this mean for the SEC title race? So there could be another upset this weekend or the week after that changes all this up.
Mm-hmm. All right, Stephen. Now let's look ahead at the week to come in the Southeastern Conference. Not the greatest week, admittedly, but we're going to miss this week when we get into the spring and we're so far removed from college football. Let's start with what I think could be, not necessarily guaranteeing it, but what I think could be the best game. Missouri at Oklahoma, 2 ranked teams going at it in Norman, Oklahoma. What's your thoughts on Missouri at Oklahoma?
My first thought is remembering how crazy last year's game was.
Yeah.
Thought about that earlier today and how wild that game got, and thinking, I don't know if we'll see the same thing, but I think we are in for a heck of a game. And I think it just goes back to how these two teams match up. Seeing Ahmad Hardy play this Oklahoma defense that is first in the SEC against the run. Does Bo Prabula come back this week for Missouri? That was pretty interesting to see him out there throwing on Saturday. So maybe some quarterback uncertainty for Missouri, but also with Oklahoma, the motivation here, they just picked up a good win. You can't overlook Missouri. You're 2 wins away from the playoffs. So I want to see how Oklahoma kind of finishes the job here. You're playing a team that's really strong at the line of scrimmage on offense and on defense. We know Oklahoma's offensive line is still in the process, or still developing. And the offense for Oklahoma, much like we talked about with Alabama, the game, they didn't, I think, averaging like under 5 yards of play in SEC games this year. So this one seems like, to me, it's going to be maybe a little bit closer than some people just think right off the jump.
And maybe not a perfect comparison, Stephen, but Oklahoma fans, I think, need to look no further than last week. Most were counting them out on the road at Alabama. They got it done with defense and special teams. I think these are 2 areas where Missouri could pull. If they pull an upset, they're going to have to step up there. But Missouri's defense, criminally underrated, going up against Oklahoma's offense. I would favor Missouri's defense there. And again, special teams probably not as good, because that kicker is a huge advantage towards Oklahoma in that regard. But we will need a block perhaps or something of that nature. But that would be kind of the recipe, because I know we're all looking at Ahmad Hardy and Jamal Roberts, and the quarterback position. But what let me just kind of narrow down my rambling here, Stephen. Where would you agree with me? Missouri defense, Oklahoma offense, that could be a critical matchup and it may favor Missouri here.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost strength on strength when Oklahoma's defense is playing Ahmad Hardy in the rushing attack, and it's like question mark for Oklahoma's offense against a really good Missouri defense. So yeah, I think so. I mean, if I'm looking just on paper, Missouri is 6th in the country in defensive success rate right now. Oklahoma is 1st, and Oklahoma is 86th offensively in success rate. So you're just talking about a top 10 defense playing a top 90 offense. Some of those numbers may be skewed a little bit because of Mateer's injury, but you're right. I mean, if I'm Missouri, I'm looking at this going, hey, our defense can go in there. We can cause problems. If we can get a couple takeaways, we can create a short field or two. Don't think you're going to see Ahmad Hardy run for 300 yards, but can you do enough? And then maybe you get a play or two from Zollers or Prabula, short fields. You do the same thing that Oklahoma did to Alabama, and there's your recipe for an upset right there.
Yeah, and you reference Bo Prabula, anybody that missed it. So he came out and warmed up with the team, was throwing passes leading up to the Mississippi State game. Apparently had no brace, no boot, nothing. He was just looked normal. He didn't put on the pads or anything. But if they clear him, it's kind of hard to see him not playing. Would you agree with that?
I agree. I think number one, the experience factor. He probably opens up some things offensively. How much is he going to be able to give you as a runner? Is there any rust there? That would be my concern. But I think in this case, would you want to start a true freshman on the road at Oklahoma or start somebody in Prabula who's got more starts under his belt? I think that answer is pretty obvious. And also, I think that helps Missouri here.
Right. So, again, that's another wild card heading into this matchup. But this is going to be a heck of a game. And, they don't honor it, Stephen and Norman, as a rivalry. I get it, right? But if they won't even like me uttering this sentence, Stephen. But if Missouri does the unthinkable and knocks Oklahoma from the college football playoff, would you consider it a rivalry?
I do, almost just because of the old Big 12 stuff, and because I would imagine a 9-game SEC slate is probably going to be, hyped up. I know fans may don't see it. I see it that way. Like anytime these two are going to play in the future, which also, Mike, brings me to, I think the last weekend was like Separation Saturday. I think this is like Throwback Saturday because you got Tennessee, Florida, you got Missouri, Oklahoma, you got some Arkansas, Texas, old conference mates now reunited. So this is kind of like a throwback weekend for me. But yeah, to answer your question, I think there's a little bit of rivalry there for me just because of the old Big 12 stuff, but maybe over time it becomes more of one for Oklahoma and Missouri, especially because, we'll see how the schedules shake out over the next 10, 15 years in this conference with who's playing who on that last weekend.
Right. So we talked quite a bit about Tennessee, Florida. Any additional thoughts on the matchup and how this potentially plays out in the Swamp?
My biggest thing, Mike, is I can just remember all these matchups in the 90s and how awesome they were, right? I mean, just thinking about like the Saturday, it was like early in the season. And so to see this game played in November is just such like a shock to my brain that this game is later in the year as opposed to earlier. I think the one thing I wonder about this game is looking at the big plays Florida has allowed in the secondary. Can Aguilar and these receivers hook up for a few of those on Saturday? And then I think if you're Florida just offensively, you've got some momentum off of the Ole Miss performance. Can you come home and build on that? So I think within the matchup, given all the storylines, I think there's some interesting sort of battles that we're going to see on Saturday.
Yeah, and I know it was pretty easy to write Florida off after the Kentucky loss, even though I picked them against the spread last week because I thought they would show up. It's very hard for me to see these. I know it's a new era. The rivalries don't quite mean what they once did, which is very unfortunate. But Tennessee, Florida, Florida State, it's very hard for me to see these players tanking, or I don't know if that's the right word, but just kind of phoning in these games. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I do too. I think I was very curious to see the fight out of Florida. So the fact that they showed up last week and played so well and showed some fight after falling behind 10-0, I think makes me think that we're going to see a pretty motivated team on Saturday with Tennessee and then again with Florida State in a couple of weeks. So I think that's just great. Like these games could mean absolutely nothing at this point, or there's in a schedule like this where there's not a lot of high profile matchups. I think that's going to make this one, I guess, if you're worried about like a one-sided affair, I don't think you're worried about that after last week.
Right. And again, new era, just not what it once was. I'm sounding like old man yelling at the clouds here, but Florida's probably got to have a lot of confidence that they can beat Tennessee given the history. Now, why that's maybe diminished a little bit because again, I don't know how many players were actually on the roster through much of these wins, but 2 years ago, I know it was completely different, but a little bit the same, Stephen, where Tennessee favored on the road to beat Florida, and it was arguably Billy Napier's best win. Short, maybe Texas now, UT Junior, but Napier had something at home against UT, so give that for what it's worth. But hey, Florida expecting perhaps to get Caleb Banks back, big defensive lineman, and Tennessee, when they can't run the ball, they're not very good, and that's been a real issue. Florida getting perhaps their best, and the fact that one of their best players been out most of the season, apparently coming back. I know why you're laughing, Stephen. That's not why I'm saying it, but I'm saying it. This team is not in the tank. If we got a guy, NFL prospects, he's not shutting it down. He's working his ass off to get back on the field. That's got to be a reflection of this locker room, I would think.
Yeah, it does. And I think my first thought on that is, like, if you're a Tennessee fan, it's like, oh, great. They're getting one back, a guy who was like preseason All-American. Just perfect timing to come right back before you play Tennessee, and how crazy this rivalry has been at times.
It could only be more Tennessee if, and I don't want anything bad to happen to DJ Lagway at all. Let's say he comes out and he's like, you know what, I don't feel like playing today, which he's a class act. He's all Gator. That's not going to happen. But the point being is Tennessee backup quarterbacks against Florida, particularly ones that have done literally nothing ever and will never do anything after the Tennessee game. The backup, Tramel Jones, true freshman probably. If he plays, he will star in this game. He will probably score 5 to 6 touchdowns if history is any indication.
Or just the way Tennessee's defense has played this year too, right? Yeah, it's like you got the double whammy there, the history of this year.
Well, speaking of double whammy, I'm going to cry if we keep talking about this, Steve. How about Kentucky at Vanderbilt? Night game. I can't, due to the schedule largely, this is one of the marquee games, but SEC Nation, Paul Feinbaum, they're going to be on location for this. Again, Vanderbilt, even though Steven hates them and he's out on them in the playoffs, they still got their playoff hopes on the line. They've got to win out. It's got to start here. And now all of a sudden, Kentucky's got some momentum. Cutter Boley, a revelation. Why this guy wasn't playing from week 1, I'll never know. But that's why I think Mark Stoops should still be fired, because he doesn't know what the hell he's doing when it comes to quarterbacks. But that's here nor there. Thoughts on this matchup, Stevie? Because this is a big game for both of these programs.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this game. I mean, the first thing that jumps out is just the quarterback battle. Cutter Boley's been playing really well, like the way he's developing. Vanderbilt's defense kind of been taking on a little bit of water the last couple weeks. They've allowed 6 yards per play in 5 out of the last 6 games. So it's a pretty good opportunity here for Kentucky with Cutter Boley playing well, Seth McGowan, that rushing attack. So like the momentum, like the way Cutter Boley's been playing. And then on the other side, Mike, that bye week probably came at a great time for Vanderbilt. They played that tough stretch, talked about the defensive concerns, but they played that emotional game against Auburn. And so now they've had a couple of weeks to reset, to get ready for this stretch to the season. That's probably the best case scenario, given they've got a hot Kentucky team coming in, and they've got this game against Tennessee coming up. So I like the timing here for Vanderbilt. Also, great matchup, too, between Kentucky's defense and Pavia. I think that's going to be a fun back-and-forth battle.
Yeah, and isn't it interesting? The spotlight keeps getting bigger on the Commodores, and they haven't shied away from it. So, it's kind of interesting that this is kind of becoming the new norm for the Commodores. It's just interesting. It's interesting how this new age of college football, I can't believe some people hate it, Stephen. I think it's phenomenal. Just the fact that the cellar dweller of the SEC, I've said on a Netflix documentary, Stephen, to call them shit, I've already forgot the line. But I think it was I think
it was the doormats, right?
Yeah, it's disrespectful to doormats to call them a damn doormat of the SEC. Now here they are making the college football playoff potentially. I think that's phenomenal.
I know you won't like my what I'm about to say, but it also includes Indiana in that discussion too. It's great for college football to see some of these new powers kind of emerge. If nothing else, like there's more parity. I think the week-to-week chaos, the off-season chaos, it's all fun. Probably about the end of the season, we're going to get a Georgia-Ohio State national championship game, and it'll be just like old times. So,
All right. Well, hey, speaking of old times, Stephen, how about Arkansas at Texas? Old rivalry, new rivalry. Texas floundering a little bit, but again, they still have, it's a long shot, but they still have a shot at the college football playoff. Meanwhile, Arkansas, Stephen, I don't know if you're aware of this. They are literally 27 points away from a 9-1 record. But unfortunately, they're 2-8 instead. Thoughts on this one? Can Arkansas keep getting up and being competitive? And if history's any indication, Stephen, they're going to give Texas everything they want and lose by 3 points.
Yeah, that was kind of where I was going to start, was if you're Arkansas, can you run out of steam? Because it doesn't feel that way, because it feels like after everything with the coaching turnover, the crazy losses, the close losses, you're like, at some point, do they have one in them that they can pick off a Texas or a Missouri? It's probably going to be tough to go into Austin and get a victory. But I do think, given we saw this last year when the game was in Fayetteville, does feel like Arkansas is going to punch Texas around. They're going to make this a 4-quarter game. It's going to be fun to see Texas defensively try to corral Taylor Green. That's going to be a good battle. And then on the other side, I mean, if you're Texas and you've had all these offensive issues, the Arkansas defense is pretty forgiving when it comes up to these yards and points. So, Arch, offensive line, rushing attack, if you want to work on some things before Texas A&M, this is pretty much the best case scenario against Arkansas.
But do you think it's fair to say, Stephen, that, again, I know Arkansas not very good. I'm not trying to polish up a turd over here, but they do have some difference makers on the defensive line. Their offensive line's been pretty decent. That matches up well against Texas. And more importantly, perhaps for Texas, what have we seen all season? They kind of play down to the level of competition. The San Jose State game was not impressive. UTEP was certainly not impressive. Probably should have lost to Kentucky. Definitely should have lost to Mississippi State. These are teams well below their talent level. Florida, Florida played their hearts out that game, but should have won that one. I mean, given this devastating loss, their physicality, their toughness is being questioned. Sarkisian's out here in la-la land thinking, 3 losses is par for the course, I guess. It wouldn't be the biggest stunner in the world if Texas kind of phoned in this one or gets caught looking ahead to A&M, would it?
Right. Dangerous spot with Texas A&M on the look ahead. Also, Mike, I think there is a danger to just say Arkansas is 2-8. And it's if you just see the record, you're going to go, well, Texas should just win easy. They're at home. Arkansas is 2-8. But I think no matter who has been on the other side, with the exception of the Notre Dame game, Arkansas has been in this game on the verge of an upset. And I think just the timing of it, off the loss to Georgia, the fact that Arkansas has been punching teams above it in the standings and losing close, and then the look ahead factor. And you also got to defend Taylor Green like that. The offensive line for Arkansas, Taylor Green, I think they can create some problems for this Texas defense. I mean, Texas looks like a 10-point favorite. I honestly thought it'd probably be a little bit higher. So that's kind of giving the Hogs some respect, even though they're 2-8.
Indeed, Stephen, indeed. And it's been about 10 minutes since we talked to Lane Kiffin. I got an update here. Not really, but a funny one. Apologies if you're just listening back later because you won't get this joke. But I just saw an LSU outlet, Stephen. They're talking about Kiffin at LSU here, I guess, on this visit. And they did this horrible Photoshop. This was so bad, I had to share it. What are we doing here, folks? I'm going to share it with the screen here. Inside scoop, Lane Kiffin and LSU. I mean, they tried, right? They gave it A for effort here, but I'm going to give this a D- for execution. He looks a little bit like an alien here.
That doesn't even look like Lane Kiffin. Who is that?
It's Lane Whiffen. Get it right.
His alter ego. That's who runs his Twitter account, right?
All right. How about Coastal Carolina, South Carolina? Good night, Stevie. Can the Gamecocks get up off the mat? I don't know if you heard this, Stephen, but Beamer said Alabama, arguably the best team in the conference when we played them. A&M, the best team in the conference. We held the lead in the fourth quarter. That was his rally cry this week. He literally said that.
Going with the old Les Miles undefeated in regulation.
Any thoughts on Coastal Carolina here?
Yeah, Coastal Carolina head coach Tim Beck. No, not that Tim Beck over at Vanderbilt. This is a different one. They are 6-4. They are bowl eligible out of the Sun Belt, but they did maybe lose their starting quarterback in last week's game. So that is something to watch here. But Mike, I think what I'm trying to tell you is this is a game South Carolina should win. And even off last week's disappointment, I did like the offensive start for South Carolina. I thought Mike Furry in his first game as the interim play caller did a nice job. So I think if you're South Carolina, if you pick up where you left off there, given that Coastal's defense is not very good, South Carolina should be able to take care of business here.
Okay. And then any thoughts on Western Kentucky at LSU? LSU coming off their first win of the Frank Wilson era.
Mike, old friend Tyson Helton.
Oh, shout out.
Kentucky coming into town here. They are one of the better teams in Conference USA. 8-2, good offense. They have played two quarterbacks. The new quarterback, Rodney Tisdale, is a little bit more mobile. If you go back to the start of the season, they had Maverick McIver, all-name teamer, but he's been banged up. So we'll have to see what Western Kentucky does at quarterback. I bring that up, Mike, because with this game with Western Kentucky, they play Jacksonville State next week. And Jacksonville State and Western Kentucky are both in the mix to play for the Conference USA title. So my mind wonders how much Western Kentucky is really going to go all in on winning this game, given what they have next week. But still, this is a chance for LSU. Whether Western Kentucky is in or out roster-wise, it's a chance to finish the home slate on a high note. A lot of guys who play in their last game, don't know what Garrett Nussmeier's status is, but still, chance to finish the season on a high note for LSU at home.
And, it's interesting how you look at it because they got a big game upcoming. But I wonder the opposite side, Stephen, if they look at a matchup like this and be like, this is how realistic, I don't know, but certainly far more realistic than it would have been the first couple weeks of the season with the firings and all that. This is their opportunity to go into an SEC stadium and come out alive with a win that they could talk about the rest of their lives. And no one's going to ask them 5 years, 10 years, 50 years down the line, was an interim coach?
Right.
What was LSU's record? They're not going to ask it. They're going to be like, you played in Death Valley? How bad you lose? They're going to be like, we beat those suckers by a field goal. As time expired, it was the best game of my life. I mean, that's on the table. And again, I'm not predicting it, but this is a spot where it could happen.
Dangerous because they can also score points too.
Mm-hmm.
Western Kentucky is very, very good offensively. So that always worries me when I see one of these G5 teams playing an SEC team, is if they got the ability and the skill, talent, and quarterbacks to move the ball. Now they've been good on defense relative to Conference USA. I'm not really sure outside of that if it necessarily will hold up here, but you're right. I think if it's maybe it's a little sleepy atmosphere, maybe you get some turnovers, you've got an offense that can score, all of a sudden things get a little nervous if you're LSU. So I think if I had to put like an upset, like this one worries me more than Coastal Carolina and South Carolina. I think both of the SEC teams take care of business, but this one worries me just because I think Western's better.
Hopefully what doesn't concern you, Stephen, is the 45-point spread here virtually we have against Georgia hosting Charlotte. I mean, this is just a nice little tune-up game for them dogs before Georgia Tech, right?
Absolutely. Mike, if you want to know about Charlotte, I'll give you one thing. They have, obviously they're 1-9. Their one win came against FCS Monmouth by one score.
Wow, the Mothman, huh?
Well, the Mothman prophecies will tell you on Saturday, Kirby Smart and Georgia's going to take care of business. So,
these other games are a joke, but at Sanford, at A&M, Mercer, at Auburn, Eastern Illinois, right? I always get that. Eastern, Southern, whatever the heck they are. At Alabama, they're going to lose on Saturday. We don't need to have any information on these teams, but anything you'll be kind of trying to glean off A&M, Auburn, in Alabama?
I do think Mercer at Auburn, Mike, is interesting. Mercer is one of the better FCS teams, and they can also throw the ball around quite a bit. So I do wonder, with Ashton Daniels taking the redshirt game, basically, do we see how does Jackson Arnold play? How much do we see of Deuce Knight? I think watching the quarterbacks at Auburn will be interesting in this spot. I think as far as the others, Mike, Alabama, Texas A&M, I think A&M could probably play at second string and win this game by a lot. Sanford's pretty bad. But Alabama, I do think I want to see kind of I don't think you'll lack for motivation, but maybe like working on the run game a little bit, kind of taking care of business and getting ready for Auburn. Like, just get the bad feeling away and get refocused and get a big win for the Auburn matchup coming up.
Right. All right, Stephen, we have officially passed the 2-hour mark, so I really do appreciate all the time that you've given us to drop some knowledge and talk about Lane Kiffin for about 90 minutes. Anything you want to say before we close this one out?
Mike, I can't wait to be back on Wednesday. We'll see what the playoff rankings bring us tomorrow night. And maybe by Wednesday, we'll have some more coaching drama. So as always, enjoy it, and hope all the cousins as well. I appreciate all y'all stopping by.
Yeah, will Kiffin have a new home on Wednesday? Will you make that prediction for us?
I'm going to guess not. I'm going to guess the drama continues for a few more days, right?
He's going to soak up every second of it, I have no doubt. Before you go, Stephen, as always, remind the cousins how to follow you, how to find your work.
You can find all my work over at athlonsports.com, at Athlon Stephen on Twitter, and Stephen LCFB over on the Instagram and Facebook.
And shout out Cousin JP. Today's shout outs: Truffle Shuffle, Cousin JR, Xavier, Stephen Up, All Day Trey, War Bebot, Cousin Rick, Fatal Recoil, Cousin Rick, Serial Killer, Akini, Obi, and Boss. We appreciate each and every one of you for hanging out all season long. We're still going strong. We ain't going anywhere. We really appreciate all the support. Without you guys, we don't have a show. Please like, subscribe, share it with someone you think might be interested. That's the best way to help the show. Doesn't cost you a thing. Until then, we'll catch you tomorrow. We got the Rush Hour. We got Cousin Shane. He'll be back to preview all these fantastic matchups. Until then, we'll see you tomorrow.
Hey, buddy, this beer's for you, Mike, and Cousin Shane. That SEC podcast loves the Pirate, and the Pirate loves that SEC podcast. Hail State.